Hi, I'm Matt Klein. It's time for a philosophy class on the No Show Sportscast. Today we're going to be looking at winning and showing emotion. Should you be showing emotion when you're winning? Maybe if you're not all the time. Maybe you're going overboard a little bit. Is winning the most important thing? Can you celebrate and show emotion after you've won? Is winning more important than having fun? There's a lot of things that we could talk about here, and I think it's very interesting that we kind of dig a little bit deeper into the actual principle here. That's one of my favorite words that transcends things that like sports and life. Interacting. There's a lot of different ways that we can look around this, and that's kind of what's brought my attention here to the surface. And this is something that I've been wanting to talk about for a very long time. I feel like we often are misconstrued here on what we're trying to focus on when it comes to winning, when it comes to showing emotion. Which one is more important? There can be a lot of just undisclosed silences on here. There really isn't a whole lot that we can go to the surface and talk about. Why am I talking about this? Well, I had a conversation with my friends Tiger and Hugh back in November. We were talking about it a little bit, and I wanted to get their opinions. And I think that there is a lot that we can look at if we dig really deep into this. And partially because it shows up in sports a lot. Like, I'm reminded a lot when I see different situations. And of course, we can talk about this in generalities, but there are a lot of specific events that happen that kind of take away our attention. And then we end up thinking to ourselves, without any sort of context, we just think that they're over celebrating or they're not being happy enough, given the stakes. And that's why it's very hard. But there are a lot of generalities that we can make, and that's what we're trying to do here. So this kind of thing, it shows up on sports a lot, right? Like, a lot of the times we see players, they celebrate, for example, in soccer, they're very, very passionate about scoring goals. And they celebrate. They go completely off the train here. It seems like a bit much, especially if you're from a team or from a sports league. Like in basketball, perhaps they don't celebrate after every basket. Usually they celebrate, a baseball player would celebrate, especially on a home run. Maybe not right away, but as they eventually get around to home base, and then they dab up their friends in the dugout. Things like that, right? For scoring a goal in hockey, you're usually always acknowledging it. There's some sort of physical motion and movement that you're going to show that's differentiating you from, well, you usually, that's a reaction, right? So it shows up in sports a lot. And often there's a case where perhaps someone is showing too much emotion at the wrong time, like if you're losing and you think that you're winning, or when you're dominating and you're still kind of like, you know what, there's a little bit more to be done. Context matters, right? But we have to also look at generalities. What can we conclude here? What can we say is really going on here behind just the contextualized stuff, the circumstantial events that are happening that we're thinking, okay, this is a very important, an important moment. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a few situations that I've kind of noticed. Like I mentioned with soccer players, I feel like sometimes they go over the top. Maybe they're down 3-0 and they score, it's 3-1. You still have a lot more to do. I remember in the World Cup, there was a goal that Mbappe scored, and right away he just went, grabbed the ball, brought it right back. I'm pretty sure he had just tied the game, or the game got even closer. But it's stuff like that. Like, you're more disciplined because you are looking at the bigger picture. And that's ultimately what it comes down to. A lot of the times last season and the season before that, I felt like the Toronto Blue Jays, they were celebrating way too much in the dugout. Like, they were throwing seeds on each other and just putting the jacket on and having a good time. And maybe you scored a home run, you're not down 5-0 anymore, but you're down 5-1. And then we see the opposite, like I mentioned. We see guys that are hitting home runs all the time and they don't show any emotion. We saw that a lot from Aaron Judge. I revere the guy for that, because there's a time and a place, and we're looking at the bigger picture, right? Guys get frustrated and angry when they're winning. Like, look at Tom Brady. The guy has won it all. He has been through so much in his career. It's surrounded by winning. The desire to probably have one more ring, one more Super Bowl championship is very inviting to him. But regardless of that, he's focusing on the now. I remember this one time he was screaming at Gronk to get set because he wants to win. He's focused. He's zooming in on the bigger picture here. There was another time when Fernando Tatis Jr., he hit a grand slam against the White Sox And right after that, he goes into the dugout. He celebrates with his teammates. But after that, he looks completely dejected. They were up by about 15 points. I don't think that really mattered. I think what mattered was he wasn't really feeling like it mattered or it was important, even though he just hit a grand slam. He looked depressed. He looked frustrated. He looked like he was the best player in baseball at the time. This was about 2 years ago. He hit that grand slam and everything looked amazing. But things weren't really, it doesn't always tell the whole story. And we're going to get into a little bit more of the Blue Jays as the MLB season is coming upon us, right? Like it's something that we can look at, and it's something that I'm focusing on as well, because it's like they changed a lot of their ethos. They changed their culture. And I'm very happy that they did. I saw this coming. And now baseball spectators alike are noticing it. It's very important. It's something that we should be acknowledging here. What's the culture like? What's the vibe like? Have we won anything? Have the Blue Jays achieved anything? So basically what I want to be looking at is I want to be looking at how a player ought to behave and show emotion generally throughout a game, no matter what the season is. Whether it's a preseason game in you're playing a Nicaraguan team and you're a pinch runner and it's the ninth inning and it's an 8-3 game, or it's the World Series, regardless of the context. That's why it's very important here, guys. We got to be focusing on what your attitude is, because that is your behavior to play in the game, regardless of the context. That is what is going to justify your ability to judge a game, and it's also going to show your person, what you're like, right? Later on, down the road. So I want to start with the proposition that I think that winning is the most important thing. It is. And that's just my opinion. I'm not going to, this isn't an indictment on people that think that it's better to have fun and enjoy yourself. And, if you win, you win. If you lose, you lose. You got to learn from a lot of those things. But when it comes to sports, what's the goal here? To be effective. To be efficient, to win. Not necessarily, like, it's very important. Like, that is the goal here. That's what we're all trying to get to as a team. That's the point here. I like winning as being the prime mover in sports because it's irrevocable. You either win or you lose. It's a nice, easy, analytical metric to look back and to chart in a large amount of time, so that you can see the ultimate progression of a team, how they're going from wins and losses. We're going to use the Blue Jays, for example. Some would say that they made the playoffs last year. Some wouldn't. I wouldn't say that they made the playoffs. Why? Because they were qualifying for a best-of-3 wildcard weekend event, where essentially all that they had to do was win 2 games, and maybe if they won 1 game, a single game, I would feel different about it, but they didn't. Why? Because on Friday morning, it was just wildcard weekend. On Friday morning, they were in the playoffs, and then Saturday night they were out because they lost 2 games in a row. And that was just another quintessential example. And we're seeing this in March Madness right now. I think that it's very interesting for me to see these players that are celebrating, they're spraying champagne, they're putting on snowboarding goggles, they're partying it up. They're wearing T-shirts that say Final Four. They get their hats that say Final Four. To me, it's like, why on earth are you celebrating? Why on earth were the Blue Jays celebrating that they made the playoffs last year as if they won the whole thing? It's completely ridiculous. So back to what it means to win, how you win, what does this look like? What is the amalgamation of players that are being assembled here in order for a team to ultimately judge whether or not they can compete for a championship, whatever that metric may be? Well, you have to work together as a team. You have to be an individual that is willing to sacrifice, to be in a position of humility, to realize that you can't do it all on your own. You can't win. There's parallels to real life, people. That's what we're seeing here. It's like there's so many things going on in a team that is going to mold you. You have to be prepared to be molded, and you need to be prepared to do what is necessary. And sometimes that means that you're not going to be the one that's bringing the puck into the offensive zone, or dribbling the ball up, or being the one at bat when you're needed in the bottom of the ninth, whatever the case may be. For the better thing, overall picture, that's kind of been a theme that we've been talking about. So I was listening to Michael Porter Jr.'s podcast once, And he was mentioning how this was before he was a starter on the Denver Nuggets. Denver Nuggets are one of the best teams in the league right now. So before that, he was trying to get his minutes in, right? But he said something that was very interesting on this podcast, on this one particular episode. He said that when he is given time by his coach, the attitude ought to be that you are given minutes, therefore you need to be doing as much as you can for your coach. This is a service that you have to be doing for your team. Not, I'm the better player and I deserve all this time because of what I can do. Therefore, I deserve the minutes. You are given a minute. You are given a certain amount of minutes, and you need to be grateful for those. They are a gift that you don't deserve. You have to earn it, and you have to do what's best for the team. And that's ultimately the coach's judgment, right? So, winning. All right, let's get back to this idea of winning. What does it mean? How are we supposed to judge generally winning and how it's best and how we get there? And is it the only thing? Why is it so important? It's very, very difficult when you're a child because you don't understand the disciplines of sports right away. You're just trying to enjoy it so that you can reach a point where you're kind of just naturally doing this. Of course, you have to have that initial kind of enjoyment, right? You're not going to play sports. You're not going to be a professional basketball player or football player if you don't love it. You have to have some sort of appreciation for the sport. Ultimately, that needs to transcend your emotion. You cannot be Steph Curry and wake up one day and think, I don't really like basketball anymore. Yes, you can feel that way. Of course you can. But at the same time, there is something built up within you from a very young age, and it's the discipline to keep fighting through, to keep going on when things aren't working out. So when you're very young, just like in your adolescent life, as you grow up, you are learning to take on more and more of this responsibility, which is the sport that you're trying to play and then you're trying to get better and better at. It's something that you're spending more and more time with if your goal is to become a professional athlete. And the problem is that you have to be ready for this because the stakes are going to get higher as you get older. If you're trying to become a professional athlete, every championship matters, every tryout, everything. It's just getting you more and more prepared for life. But again, it's a very tall task, and people seldom have the appreciation and the ability to be on this level of humility in order to not necessarily just for the betterment of your team, but also for your individual ability to become better and better at playing. Now, I don't want to judge people based off of what they've done or what they can do, but what are they prepared to do? And they need to be prepared in order to win. You're going to better yourself if your attitude is to win, to better yourself, to better the other players on your team. And this is all kind of comes down to the Blue Jays. We can look at the ethos. We can look at the zeitgeist. At the time, we've got guys like Lourdes Gurriel Jr. These guys are radioactive, okay? It sounds harsh, but the reality is that the Blue Jays were going nowhere because they were settling for mediocrity. And the emotional behavior trumped their attitude towards winning and towards playing as a team, playing to win. They were not winning. Like I mentioned, them making the playoffs last year, only to get swept to the Seahawks in less than 48 hours. It's pretty ridiculous. So Teoscar Hernandez is out the door. Lourdes Gurriel Jr. is out the door. Those two guys were a little bit too radioactive for me, and I'm sorry. They were great at baseball, but the problem is that they were just enabling the other players on their team to not care, and that was the biggest culture change. And that other baseball spectators are noticing. Hey, Lourdes Gurriel Jr. and Teoscar Hernandez are off the team. Maybe the Blue Jays won't act like such petulant, whiny children all the time. And I can talk about leadership and I can talk about coaching. That's for another philosophy class that we're gonna do. But I just want to briefly touch on how I think Bo Bichette is the captain on that team. He is the leader. Pardon me, he's not the captain. He's the leader, and that's more important. So I think that the team moving forward, they add guys like Dalton Varsho, Brandon Belt, Kevin Kiermaier. I think these guys are going to be a better shift as we're getting like the team wants to win now, and they need to be in that position to focus on winning and how important it is and how disciplined they need to be in order to better themselves and better themselves for the team.